You're presenting on suspense item, it's SB 1216. But before you commence, let me just say we're going to pass the gavel back to our Vice Chairwoman as I have to leave to a prior engagement. But thank you, Senator Wessel. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. President, or Mr. Chair, and Senators. I'm proud to speak on SB 1216. This is an important bill that aims to remove a significant barrier of successful reentry from the lives of young ex-offenders by implementing a tax incentive for employers to hire members of this disenfranchised community. If you recall the new employment tax credit program that was set up to replace the enterprise zone program, we set aside, we created a certain criteria to help attract businesses to California. This connects an employment program to that program and uses the same criteria to help ex-offenders get a job. So we understand that within a certain age range from 19 to 25, the recidivism rate is approaching 70%. And oftentimes, these young people go through an education program, they go through a job training program only to find barriers in the job market, making their ability to find a job almost impossible. So we took that program and that condition and created a bill that will give businesses a substantial tax credit who hire these young men and women. This supports the skill building approach to reducing recidivism in California. So these young people would have to go through a job training or educational program to qualify for this tax credit. And the businesses that hire them will in turn get a tax credit. This is an important bill that aims not only to help us get these young people's lives back on track, but to reduce the costs of putting people behind bars. Many of you know that it costs the taxpayer about anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 a year to keep somebody behind bars, where this program has a cap of about $15,000 a year. If we keep them gainfully employed and helping them to build a job, employment history, then we reduce the chance that they'll ever wind up back in prison, costing taxpayers thousands and thousands of dollars more. So I really appreciate this opportunity to present this important bill. I ask for your support and helping to change the tenor in the way we treat this population in California and help to reduce the amount of people we have in prison in this state. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Witnesses in support.
Hi, good afternoon. Is this on? Oh. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. My name is Danielle Lynch, and I'm happy to be here on behalf of the California Association of Local Conservation Corps, which represent the 13 local corps throughout the state and the hundreds of at-risk youth that they serve every year proudly. The mission of the corps is really to provide support services to these individuals who come from kind of rough backgrounds and are more susceptible to things like dropping out of high school, unemployment, poverty, and then the particular population that we're talking about right now, those who have a history of incarceration. So I think with this population, when they enter the Corps, what they're really doing is they're showing that they're committed to becoming positive, contributing members of the community. Through the program at the Corps, they are able to gain their high school diploma and get really important job skills training to make sure that they're ready to succeed in the work environment. But I think these populations, they have a negative stigma. So when they're ready and they've proven that they've built all these skills and they're ready to enter and succeed in the job marketplace, those employers don't really see the progress that they've made and all the skills that they've attained. They just see that felony record. So I think this policy really provides an incentive for those employers to look past that felony and take advantage of all the skills that those individuals have attained in their ability and readiness to become a contributing member of society. As Senator Hueso pointed out, there is in the state demonstrated interest in looking at these populations and bringing them back into society as positive members of society, but these individuals come from all across the state, not just those very specific geographic areas in the new employment credit. So we're very thankful to the senator for really focusing on the ability of every single one of these individuals in this population to contribute to society and provide all these benefits to the state as a whole.
Thank you. I just want to remind you, please keep your comments to the fiscal impacts. The bill, the policy has already been discussed, and that will help us get through a lot that we still have to go through. Thank you. Next witness in support. Witness in opposition? There are none? Department of Finance.
The Department of Finance is opposed to this bill due to its negative impact on state revenues. We'll have to continue to consider the structural balance of the state budget in these ongoing discussions this spring. We're not prepared to support this at this time. The Franchise Tax Board estimates the total general fund revenue loss of $300,000 in 16-17, $1.1 million in 17-18, and $1.8 million in 18-19.
Thank you. So this is the candidate for suspense. Are there any questions? Yes. I saw Tony first. Senator Mendoza and then Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. I just want to commend the senator for bringing this forward. And I know we're not voting out for today because we're financial considerations, but I do think it's money well spent to get these kids and these young men and women who already served their time, want to make sure they get the job and get their life back on track. And I think this is probably one of the most creative waves I've seen in a while. So thank you for bringing it. And hopefully it'll get out of suspense. Thank you.
Senator Nielsen and then Senator Beal.
Senator, would this type individual be a discharged felon? In other words, they've completed their term and they are discharged from parole, or will they still be on parole?
I imagine that as long as they can come back into society and get a job, they would qualify for this.
So that young man's nodding. That means that he's completed the term, but some of them have up to 3-year parole. And so they could be working in this program. The ultimate question would be, if they violate parole or commit a new crime, then would that terminate their ability to participate?
Just as long as the law applies. If they violate their parole or commit a new crime, that means they're going back to jail. So they can't participate in a program that they can't work in.
That was what I was trying to get at. I was looking at this list, would not apply in the following conditions, and the only one that I saw that might cover that, let's see, there are a number of them, but due to the misconduct of that employee, but it does not define misconduct. I'm okay because I think it's a proper step, but I would suggest you clarify that to make sure that if someone reoffends or violates parole, then that terminates their ability to participate.
Once they're terminated from a job, that employer pretty much loses that tax credit.
Okay. Just a clarification.
Yeah.
Senator Bell.
I know Senator Wessel is going to articulate some of this better than me, but if you look at recidivism rates and how to reduce recidivism rates, there's pretty much a national consensus. We've been looking at this in the Budget Subcommittee on Public Safety. And you have to have an employment opportunity. You have to have good health care to keep people from getting back on drugs, and you have to have mental health programs transition. So what the state has done is the state has invested, due to the receiver, the court receiver, a lot of money in these so-called reentry centers. We've invested hundreds of millions of billions actually in building them in Stockton and other places, reentry centers, okay? So if you don't have an opportunity to employ somebody after they leave those reentry centers, it's almost like you're wasting the money on the investment in the reentry center. So to me, they got to have something that goes beyond the reentry study into the parole and beyond the parole period to keep them satisfactorily employed and off drugs and stabilize their housing and mental health conditions. So I just wanted to point that out, that we're spending all this money, billions of dollars on these reentry centers. So let's have a full picture on that particular aspect of how we get the recidivism reduced. And I think this bill is a piece of the puzzle, and I thank the Senator for introducing it.
Would you like to close, Senator Waso?
I just would like to respond to the Department of Finance comments.
Sure.
Because when we eliminated the enterprise zone, that was costing the state about $900 million. And the legislature approved about the replacement program, which was the new employment tax credit, replaced it to the tune of $700 million in potential tax credits to the people that qualified under the program. To this date, we've only spent $1 million on that program. So in responding to the Department of Finance's concerns, this law was written into that employment tax credit to the tune of about, this will have about a $60,000 annual impact to the budget. And that's a very, very small number that fits well within the number that the legislature approved to create a competitive tax credit program for businesses in the state. So this fits within that. We're not increasing a tax credit to that universe. We're adjusting it because it hasn't been tapped into. Why not reform it, or why not adjust it in a way that will not only help businesses but help these young kids get their lives back on track? This is a small drop in the bucket in terms of what we can do in economic development and
Thank you, Senator.
prison reform in our
You're making
state.
some compelling arguments, and I see Department of Finance taking a lot of notes. So
That's a
it
good
is a
thing.
candidate for suspense, and without objection, then I will send it to suspense.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Who's next? Senator Morlock? I can't see beyond that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor. This is my first Appropriations Committee, so have at it, Senator Mendoza, have at it. Today's Orange County Register had a full-page drawing on tinderbox that we're dealing with major fire issues, tree mortality, drought, sudden oak death, beetles. I don't know if you want to pass it around. And so we have wildfire concerns in Laguna Beach, and we put this bill together to work with the PUC to identify high-risk areas and prioritize them for improvements like undergrounding of electrical wires. We've had over 40 car accidents into power poles on Laguna Canyon Road, and so we just want to try and remedy that for not only this area but others. So, Madam Chair, when we did the bill, we wrote that it would be good to do it in consultation with CAL FIRE, but CAL FIRE's coming back and saying we need 2 engineers full-time for 2 years. Madam Chair, they just put out, they're required to do an assessment every 5 years. They did one in 2010. They're going to do one for 2015. We don't need someone for 2 years. We don't need someone for two staff people. So, Madam Chair, I'm more than happy to amend the bill to remove just a few the words. It says the commission in consultation with the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection. I'm happy to strike that from the bill just to move it forward, because this should not be a very significant cost concern, because even the media can put together maps and show you where the high interest zones are. We had the Butte fire last year. We had people that were lost so much, some lost lives. We've got to, and that was caused by an electrical wire that was hit by a branch. So we've got to start prioritizing these areas, protect the citizens of this state, and work with the CPUC and utilities to make sure that things are taken care of in high population areas. So I request, I'd like to move the bill forward, Madam Chair, and that's my request.
It is a candidate for suspense today because of the cost, and perhaps your amendments would change that, but it's kind of late at this point in time, so you'll have to work through that after today's hearing. But do you have witnesses in support?
But felt it was simple. It has had no opposition. I request an aye vote.
Any witnesses in opposition? There are none. Department of Finance?
No file.
There's no file. Any questions from committee? Then you may close, Senator Warlock.
I request an aye vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
It is a candidate for suspense, so it goes suspense without objection.
Thank you.
We have two members, Senator Nielsen and Senator Hill, that have bills that are up today. Can you start with that?
Okay, are they,
Yeah.
are they suspense candidates? They didn't waive presentation? Members, we can take committee bills. We don't have any additional. Senators Hill here.
Hill's up first.
Senator Hill, are you waiving presentation? I understand you wish to present on 1033? Yes. Yeah, please do. Okay, what page is that on? You have to be my eyes and ears here. 193.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, thank you. On the fiscal side of this issue, SB 1033, there are about 100 doctors placed on probation every year for serious offenses. Roughly 30 of those who receive 3-year probation might be more likely to pursue a hearing with the medical board since they don't want to provide a notice to their patients. Hearing costs are estimated at $35,000 per case. Last week, the bill was amended to allow the medical board to recover costs for the hearing from physicians like other regulatory boards do. So the bill will be revenue neutral since fees will cover costs. When the committee consultants and staff looked at it more carefully over the next couple of weeks. The policy question before us, though, is wouldn't you want to know if your doctor was on probation for a serious offense? This bill says that if a doctor is on probation for sexual misconduct, substance abuse, gross negligence, or a felony conviction related to patient care, then they would have to provide their patient with a one-page notice similar to the poster before you. These posters illustrate the patient notification required under the bill compared to what the doctor's lobbyists are pushing for. The bill would require a summary of the cause of probation, probation status, and a description of the terms, and the website and the telephone number of the California Medical Board. Doctors' lobbyists are trying to withhold information from the patient, even though it's available online. And I think that's a point that needs to be well stated. The opponents are stating that they do not want this information in front of the patient, yet the information is clearly available online with a number of, maybe it took 10 to 15 minutes for a staff member of mine and about 9 clicks to get to it. So really what they're telling us is they don't want the patient to see the information, but it is available online if you want to do it. I want to remind members that this bill does not apply to the over 99% of the more than 137,000 good-standing licensed physicians in California. The bill only applies to the 500 or 600 of them who underwent an extensive, and I would say an extensive investigation and probation process involving several state departments, including the Attorney General's office. Physicians are already required to inform hospitals, and they're also by law required to inform their malpractice insurers of their probation status. It was interesting today as I was driving to Sacramento, there was a big billboard funded by one of our California's largest HMOs. And the billboard said, "Choose the doctor that fits." Well, how can you choose the doctor that fits if you don't know about the doctors that you're looking at? So this would provide that information that I think is clearly needed. 82% of Americans think that patients deserve to know if their doctor's on probation for serious offenses. And so do the editorial boards of the Los Angeles Times, the San Jose Mercury News, and the San Francisco Chronicle, who all support this bill. I have some witnesses, Madam Chair. Thank you for the indulgence.
Hello, I'm Mariana Sullivan with the Consumers Union Safe Patient Project and Consumer Reports Magazine. That's the advocacy arm of Consumer Reports Magazine. And I think you've just been given the May edition of Consumer Reports Magazine, which deals with this question of physicians on probation and disclosure. I want to just run through a few examples of doctors currently on probation in California. And these are the sorts of doctors that would be required to notify their patients if this bill went into effect. Dr. Van Vu runs the California Pain Center in Huntington Beach. In recent years, 16 of his patients have died from drug overdoses. He was accused of gross negligence and placed on probation by the medical board after an exhaustive investigation. A neurologist was found to have allowed unlicensed medical assistants to routinely give patients narcotic painkillers through infusion pumps. In one case, a woman was sent home after receiving more than 4 times the proper dose. She was found dead the next morning. This doctor is currently serving 5 years probation. A family practice doctor was found to be excessively prescribing controlled substances to patients, including one who received 1,000 oxycodone tablets at one time. He also sold drugs for cash and provided free drugs to patients in exchange for sex. This doctor is currently serving 10 years probation in California. A cardiologist was found to have performed gross negligence in treating 4 people with heart disease, including 2 who died. He was cited for exposing patients to extremely excessive radiation, dictating a fictitious history and physical without seeing a patient, and dictating medical records weeks after the patient died. He is currently serving 5 years probation. The LA Times editorial wrote, "It's awkward, no doubt, for a doctor to inform patients when he or she is on probation. The California Medical Association predictably objects to notification, saying it would put a burden on the doctor-patient relationship. True, but that's the very point. Patients should be fully informed so they can decide whether they want that relationship to continue." And so Consumers Union urges you to vote yes for this bill today to provide the information to people, to patients, so that they can make informed, thoughtful decisions about to whom to entrust their health care. And we've brought 2 witnesses with us today whose lives would be quite different had this bill been in effect in recent years.
I'd like to ask the witnesses if you could keep your comments to the fiscal issues where possible, because it is a fiscal committee, so focusing on briefly the situation and if you have any comments on the fiscal implications.
Okay, my name is Michelle Montserrat Ramos. I'm with Consumers Union Safe Patient Project. I became an advocate following the death of my fiance, Lloyd Montserrat. Before Lloyd entered the hospital, I checked the medical board website. Lloyd's doctor's profile was clean, yet his background was far from clean. There were no arrests listed, and Lloyd's doctor had been arrested for felony possession of crack cocaine and prostitution. Since Lloyd did not have the right to know that his doctor had a problem with crack cocaine, it cost Lloyd his life. The state failed Lloyd. I was not aware of a confidential physician diversion program. Doctors with substance abuse problems were allowed to keep participate in this program, and their patients did not have the right to know. When the program was abolished in 2007, these doctors were moved into the probation program. Today, you will find a significant number of substance abusing doctors who are on probation. The medical board believes that doctors on probation are safe to practice. I disagree. Lloyd's case is not a random tragedy. There are doctors up and down the state who have been found treating patients while impaired. They continue to get probation. We should have the right to know our doctor's probationary status. I urge you to vote through SB 1033.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon. My name is Tina Manassian. I'm with Consumers Union Safe Patient Project. I'm a survivor and a victim of medical harm. caused by a doctor whose substance abuse was kept hidden from me and countless others due to his participation in the medical board's now defunct confidential diversion program. Nearly 14 years after my botched surgery, I still suffer with excruciating pain, spitting, sutures, gaping holes, disfigurement, and a mutilated body. The Medical Board of California did not protect me. I know many patients who were victims of the same physician while he was on probation. In fact, some have died. Dr. Brian West operated on me while he was in the diversion program. This information was kept confidential from me and all his patients. Also confidential was his repeated blatant failures of testing positive with alcohol and failing to follow the restrictions of his probation. He was able to convince the Medical Board of California to give him a second and a third chance. He gamed the system and harmed patients. This was clearly a physician who had a chronic history of alcohol abuse who was allowed to operate on me and others. Had this information been available to us, some of these patients might not have died, and I wouldn't have been injured. His license was revoked in 2009, 7 years after my surgery. SB 1033 provides me and Californians the information we need to make an informed decision on who we want and who we don't want to treat us. This bill will require the Medical Board of California to mandate physicians to inform their patients of their probationary status. Your family, my family, and all the families of California are all at risk without having this information. To find a doctor on probation on the Medical Board's website is nearly impossible. SB 1033 would also require that the Medical Board prepare to make available a standardized plain language summary that describes, among other things, the offenses that led to the physician's probation. SB 1033's requirement that physicians disclose their probationary status directly to their patients is particularly important because not everyone has access to the internet, especially seniors, some seniors, and some don't even use the internet. You and your loved ones need protection also. I urge all committee members to vote yes on this important bill, and I strongly support it. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Monica Miller on behalf of the California Chiropractic Association in support. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Robert Pulio, representing the Board of Chiropractic Examiners in support.
Good afternoon. My name is Renee Nielsen. I actually took today off from work to come down here. I'm just a member of your community. I have 2 girls and I'm a single parent. And I just feel that if we don't pass SB 1033, then if something were to happen to my family, I think it would bury me financially. And I mean, overall, I think I'd end up relying on the community to help us in a time of need instead of being able to make good choices for our family to prevent something negative from happening. So thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition?
Thank you, ladies.
Good afternoon. Alicia Sanchez, representing the California Medical Association. We are in strong opposition to SB 1033. As recognized by the analysis, the bill will have significant costs due to the shift from cases that currently are being settled going all the way through to hearing. And this is due to 2 things. The fact that the bill's notice requirements are predicated on the allegations or the charge, not findings made in the final adjudication or allegations to which the physician has accepted culpability. And 2, because the notification requirement will severely impair physicians' ability to practice because of the time that it takes to have the conversation with the patients. And notably, probation is a disciplinary action which allows for practice. This bill erases much of the benefit of settling, which I would note is a negotiation. So the components of the settlement in and of itself are negotiated by the medical board, and to suggest that there might not be a situation where the physician accepts some culpability for certain components of the allegation and not others does not take into account that fact. So because you've erased the benefit of settling in for these probationary cases, it makes sense that people would choose to have their cases heard rather than settled. The June 10th amendments reestablished cost recovery only for probation for the medical board. This cost recovery was eliminated for the medical board when licensing fees were raised to incorporate the revenues that were previously captured by the medical board through cost recovery. Because the licensing fee already accommodates for these charges, this would essentially be kind of a double charge. CMA supported the fee increase that included the elimination of cost recovery and funds to cover those lost revenues because that cost recovery had been used to extract settlements. This is likely to function in this way, in this case as well. What it is unlikely to do, however, is recoup the costs of the change in the bill. Other boards have had various experiences with cost recovery. In the 2011 Sunset Review of the report of the chiropractic examiners, they reported a 43% delinquent rate in their cost recovery. The 2016 Acupuncture Board Sunset Review suggests that about 60% of the outstanding charges will be unrecoverable. And the Board of Optometry reported in its last Sunset Review that about 79% of cost recovery is unlikely or is likely not to be recoverable. Finally, the Dental Board Sunset Report notes that the challenge that exists for recovering when the licensee is unable to practice, which makes it hard to have taxable income on which to recover. So this really brings us back to the crux of the issue. If you are making it next to impossible for a physician to be able to practice in this situation where the medical board has determined that the physician can practice, sometimes with additional limitations, you are essentially going to make it next to impossible to have cost recovery in these cases as well. Finally, we would note that you're exacting a more stringent penalty on the probation than other more significant disciplinary actions like revocation. So you're creating a distinction between the types of disciplinary actions by making it just probation. And we oppose the bill and ask that you consider these comments when you are assessing it on suspense.
Next witness.
Madam Chair, Tim Madden, and I'm representing multiple clients with different positions, representing the California chapter of the American College of Emergency Physicians. We currently have an opposed unless amended position. The amendment that we've been asking for would be to exempt the emergency department from the requirement. In the May 10th amendments, there was language put in there to address this area. We don't think it quite gets there due to some language put in talking about as long as the patient is not known, as long as a physician is not known to the patient prior to the meeting. It's not uncommon for our physicians who work in the community where the patient may know them. So we've been working with Senator Hill's office and continue this discussion along those lines. For our other clients, the California chapter of the American College of Cardiology and the California Society of Plastic Surgeons, we are opposed for the reasons stated. Thank you.
Additional witness.
Jody Hicks, representing the California Academy of Family Physicians, and we are in a opposed position today. Our legislative committee is looking at potential amendments that may move that position, and I've had very brief conversations with the senator, but I just want to point out two of the main issues, and they would actually affect fiscal just because it would be a smaller population if these were to go into effect. But first, we think the bill should be prospective. There are many folks doctors on probation right now that settled, and within that settlement knew that they would be on probation and would be treating patients, and were not aware that this would be, if this law were to go into effect, that this would be part of the settlement. So we think that this should be a moving forward issue and not capture the doctors that chose settlement for the reasons, the world as it was the day that they entered into that settlement. And the second, and my colleague has touched on it already, but we really feel there's a distinct difference between the accusation, which the trigger for this particular bill is what you're accused of and what you're charged with, versus the findings, which is what you've settled down to potentially. So you could be charged with one of the more serious offenses. What you settle for could be something like bad record keeping, but you'd still have to give this summary to your patient, and it still would encompass the charge. And we just think that there's a real difference between what you are found guilty of and what you're charged with. So we would want a distinction there. Appreciating, what this bill is trying to do. We would point out too that the consumer report that people have been talking about today does say that California has the best website in the nation for transparency and trying to find out what happened with your doctor. So in that case of the trigger being a charge, you could still find all of that information on the website. So if you had to look up your doctor and they were on probation, you could find what they were charged with, you could find what they're on probation for, but we don't think that you should disrupt care if what they're found guilty of is not something that's one of those serious offenses. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional witnesses in opposition?
No, excuse me, I'm Robert Puglia with the Board of Chiropractic Examiners again. I wanted to respond to a couple of comments that were made, particularly...
Actually, sir, this is just on appropriations, and we're not having any...
Well, this is a fiscal...
You may address it through the author then.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just, okay.
Any additional witnesses in opposition? There are none. Department of Finance?
No file.
No file. So this is a candidate for suspense, so Senator Bell.
When I looked at this, I thought there's something lacking regarding the description of incentives for rehabilitation and relief of the probationary status. And I was wondering if that was considered as part of the bill in terms of opportunities to relieve somebody from their probation status due to some action that they can take. And especially when I hear the issue of substance abuse, that's kind of generally what we want people to do. We want them to take some action and show that they can recover and move on. So I kind of wonder if that was in the mix, I guess, in terms of like programs or, like if they do a program and recover and then they can, I was chairman of the hospital committee in the county for 10 years, and we had many of these kinds of problems, so we adjudicated all those issues. So I'm kind of interested in that aspect of the incentiving actions that could be taken to help somebody get off their probationary status, and then maybe in terms of also in terms of I would call it restorative justice, if you want to say, with the patients, some kind of way of taking care of that particular side of things too. So I don't know. I mean, when I was looking at this, those are the kind of aspects I was thinking of in my, it's a very complex issue, obviously. So I thought I'd discuss that today.
Sure, thank you.
It involves some money, so, that's another question too.
Thank you, Senator Bell. And you're absolutely right. What we've done in the medical board and the medical profession at this point in time does not have a program in place that would allow for substance abuse treatment and ongoing work in that regard. Senator Galgiani has a bill this year. I've been working very closely with the CMA and with Senator Galgiani to craft that so that there would be a program that if there was an intervention, if there were a self-referral, but if it is related to patient harm, and that's really the question here. If patients have been harmed, then that would go through the medical board system to develop a punishment that would be appropriate. And so how that can work in the future for some type of reform could work within that program, and we can look at that. So thank you. If I could respond to a couple of the questions that were raised. The bill does state, and when you look at the cost recovery. Cost recovery, just as all of the other professional boards, is part of that probation. You do not get off of probation until, that's one of the terms and conditions of your probation. So the fact that the medical board, the chiropractic board, or some of the other boards may have a lower rate, at the end of the day, they will have full compensation because that's part of the conditions, that's part of the punishment, that's part of the terms of probation, and it would work through that. In terms of the question of perspective only, we'll certainly look at that, but I guess as I look at it today, regardless of what the conditions were, regardless of the reasons for accepting the terms of the probation, that information is all public right now. The information is on a public website, and it used to be the medical board before this time, and that information that we want to include on the notification is the only information that was in the medical board's newsletter that they sent out up to about 2 or 3 years ago. That was all sent out and publicly disseminated to the community, but no longer. It's now within their website. So it's public information and public knowledge. The part about the charge and the accusation. This is an interesting, the way an accusation is made in the medical board. And if I could just briefly describe that, there's first a complaint. When we hear accusation, we think of that as a complaint, as someone saying, my physician did this or that. That's not the case. A complaint goes first, and then it's filed and from any source, and then it's sent to the board's central complaint unit for triage, includes a complaint in the board's jurisdiction. It goes through very multiple processes of review, of investigation, and with the Attorney General's office, and then when the facts warrant, and then when they warrant to the point where there is meet clear and convincing evidence, then an accusation is made. The accusation is the same as a legal complaint or an indictment from a court. That's the accusation. Today, in the issue of not having that as part of the disclosure is interesting, because if you are in a criminal system, that complaint is there out in front on everything. The complaint was filed. This is what you were charged with. This is what you settled or plea bargained for. It is part of the entire case and part of the entire picture that I think is important for determination at the end of the day. So I think we've covered that the recovery of costs will be there. We didn't want random complaints should not be included in this. It shouldn't just be a complaint without merit to be included in the notice. It won't be under this bill. It will be only those statements, those complaints, those accusations, those indictments that meet the Attorney General's clear and convincing evidence standard. I ask for your aye vote when it comes off of suspense. Thank you, Madam Chair, for indulging me in this.
Thank you, Senator Hill, and you did do your close, so.
That was my close.
The candidate
Thank you.
for suspense, and without objection, it moves to suspense. Thank you. So who's up next, Monning? Senator Monning?